I never thought betrayal would feel this way, not like a knife, but like a slow suffocation. Seattle had always been my city of refuge. The steady drizzle, the muted hum of traffic along I-5, the smell of roasted coffee drifting out of every corner cafe, it was the background to my life with Emily. And for a long time, I thought it was the perfect setting for the love story we were writing together. We had been married for 6 years. Emily was 31 then, bright, magnetic, with a quiet confidence that turned heads without her trying. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, which meant she often stayed home while I spent long hours at my job as a financial analyst downtown. I loved coming home to her. Even the sound of her typing in the other room was comfort. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Part 1, Subtle Cracks. It began with the phone. Emily had always been casual about her phone, leaving it on the counter, face up, while we cooked dinner together. She used to hand it to me without a thought if she needed me to check something. But now, it was always face down. She kept it close, sometimes carrying it from room to room like it was an extra limb. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. People change, habits shift. Maybe she had a new client, someone who demanded discretion. I tried to push the thought aside. But one night, after a long day at the office, I came home early. The house smelled faintly of lavender, her favorite candle, but there was something else in the air, something tense. I found Emily in the living room, her laptop on her knees. She jumped when she saw me. "You're home early," she said, a little too quickly. I smiled. "Surprise. Wanted to catch you before dinner." She closed the laptop in one swift motion, almost like she was hiding something. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to laugh. "Work stuff," she explained, brushing her hair behind her ear. "A new project." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. Part 2, The Little Lies. The little lies came after. She said she was going to meet a friend for drinks, but when I asked which friend, she hesitated. She said she was too tired for our usual Friday movie night. She said she was busy, but couldn't quite say with what. The biggest crack appeared one rainy Sunday. We were supposed to drive out to Discovery Park, walk the trails like we always did when the weather turned gray. But Emily said she had to stay home, too much work. I went alone, but something gnawed at me the entire time. The forest seemed too quiet, the waves hitting the shore too hard. When I came back hours later, her car was gone. I asked her about it. She said she'd gone to the store. But there were no grocery bags. No receipt. Just a vague smile that didn't reach her eyes. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of rain tapping the window. My chest felt heavy, like the city itself was pressing down on me. Part 3, The First Clue. It was a Tuesday when I found the first real clue. Emily had left her laptop open in the kitchen while she went to shower. I wasn't looking for anything, I swear I wasn't. But as I went to grab a glass of water, a notification popped up. A message. "Can't stop thinking about last night." My breath caught. My hand trembled as I reached for the laptop, but she must have set her messages to lock after a few seconds. The screen went black. By the time she came back downstairs, I was still standing there, the glass of water untouched. "You okay?" she asked. I forced a smile. "Yeah. Just tired." Inside, though, something had broken open. Part 4, The Confrontation That Wasn't. For days, I debated whether to confront her. I rehearsed the words in my head, "Who is he? How long has this been going on?" But every time I looked at her, really looked at her, I froze. Maybe it was fear. Fear of being right. Fear of the life we had built collapsing around me. Instead, I tried to watch. I paid attention to the way she dressed when she went out, the extra time she spent in front of the mirror. The new perfume I didn't recognize. And the late-night phone calls. I heard her once in the kitchen, whispering into the phone at nearly midnight. When she caught me watching from the stairs, she forced a smile. Couldn't sleep. Just talking to Claire. Claire. Her college friend who lived 3 states away. It was too neat, too rehearsed. Part 5, The Breaking Point. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I'd left work early, citing a headache. Driving through the drizzle, I didn't even know why I was going home, some instinct, maybe. Her car wasn't in the driveway. But the house lights were on. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cologne. Not mine. I stood in the doorway, heart hammering, listening. The silence was deafening. Then I heard it, a laugh. Emily's laugh. Soft, intimate, coming from upstairs. I froze. My legs felt like they were made of stone. Part of me wanted to run, to get back in the car and pretend I hadn't heard it. But another part of me, darker and heavier, needed to know. I climbed the stairs. Halfway up, the laughter stopped. Doors creaked. A shuffle of footsteps. By the time I reached our bedroom, it was silent. Emily stood there alone, hair tousled, cheeks flushed. She looked at me like I'd caught her stealing something. "You're home," she said, voice shaking. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The room smelled of sweat and something else I couldn't name. I knew. Part 6, Shattered Glass. We didn't talk that night. She went into the shower. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the glass of whiskey I'd poured but couldn't drink. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the glass against the wall, watch it shatter the way my chest had. But instead, I sat in silence. When she finally came downstairs, her hair damp, her eyes red, she sat across from me. "Say something," she whispered. But what was there to say? Part 7, The Truth. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. "Who is he?" I asked over coffee. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Emily's hand trembled around her mug. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she whispered. "His name is Daniel." The world tilted. How long? A few months. A few months. While I was working late, while I was bringing home takeout, while I was planning our anniversary trip to Portland, she was with him. Why? My voice cracked on the word. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I don't know. I didn't mean for it to happen. I still love you." I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You don't do this to someone you love." Part 8, The Aftermath. The days that followed were a blur. We still lived under the same roof, but it felt like we were ghosts haunting the same house. Every word was sharp. Every silence was sharper. Sometimes I caught her staring at me like she wanted to say something. Sometimes I almost reached for her hand out of habit. But then I remembered Daniel, and the distance stretched between us again. Seattle rain fell heavier than ever that week, pounding against the windows as if the sky itself was angry on my behalf. Part 9, The Decision. One night, after another silent dinner, I finally said it. "I can't do this anymore." Emily's fork clattered against her plate. Her face crumpled. "Please," she whispered. "We can fix this." But I knew we couldn't. Not anymore. I packed a bag that night. Just the essentials. She stood in the doorway, crying, begging me to stay. But I walked out into the rain, the sound of the door closing behind me louder than thunder. Part 10, Beneath the Silent Skies. I drove with no destination, just the sound of rain on the windshield and the city lights blurring in my vision. Eventually, I pulled over near Kerry Park, overlooking the skyline. Seattle spread out before me, the Space Needle rising like a silent witness. The city looked the same, but everything inside me had changed. Betrayal doesn't kill you in an instant. It lingers, like smoke after a fire. It clings to your skin, your lungs, your heart. I sat there until the rain stopped, until the clouds broke just enough for a sliver of moonlight to cut through. And in that quiet, I made a vow to myself. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Beneath the Silent Skies, Part 2. Revenge is never loud at first. It starts as a whisper, a quiet echo in the back of your mind, the kind you try to ignore while telling yourself you're better than this. But the whisper grows. It grows until it drowns out reason, until it becomes the only thing keeping you from collapsing into the grief. That's what happened after Emily's betrayal. I tried to move on. I told myself I'd start fresh, find someone new, bury the past under work, under nights spent staring out the window of my small apartment in Capitol Hill. But each time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Each time I tried to breathe, I tasted the memory of Daniel. And one night, as rain smeared the glass of my window, I realized, if she had taken everything from me, our marriage, my trust, my peace, then I would take everything from her. The plan. Mornings in Seattle had always carried the same rhythm. The faint glow of dawn filtered through gray clouds, the hiss of buses along wet pavement, the smell of coffee drifting from Pike Street cafes. For most of my life, it was comforting. But now, each morning felt like fuel, like a stage for the life I was going to dismantle. Revenge required patience. I couldn't simply storm into their lives screaming accusations. No. I wanted to watch it all unravel slowly, carefully. I began with Daniel. Through whispers in the financial district, online searches, and a few favors pulled from colleagues, I pieced together his world. Daniel worked in tech, project manager at a mid-level firm in South Lake Union. He had a reputation for being charming, ambitious, but careless with details. That was a weakness. Careless men leave trails. And Emily, she was his blind spot. She'd sacrificed me for him, believing in his promises, his charisma. I'd make sure she saw the man she destroyed her marriage for as he really was. The first move. I started small. Subtle. I waited outside Daniel's office one evening, blending into the drizzle-slick crowd of commuters. He left around 6, umbrella in hand, phone pressed to his ear. I followed at a distance, noting his route, the coffee shop he ducked into, the bar he frequented after work. That bar became my weapon. A dim-lit place on 2nd Avenue, filled with the kind of people who talked too much when they drank. I spent weeks there, quietly listening, picking up pieces of gossip from his coworkers who liked to complain after too many rounds. Daniel, it turned out, was far from faithful. He had a reputation for flirting, for late-night strategy sessions, with women from work. I didn't have to lift a finger, he was already betraying her, just as he betrayed me. All I had to do was bring it to light. The second move. I waited for the perfect night. Emily had texted me that week, one of her pleading messages, "Can we meet? Please. Just to talk." I didn't reply. She thought I was still broken, licking my wounds. That's what I wanted her to believe. Instead, I arranged for her to discover the truth about Daniel. I printed photos, grainy but clear enough. Daniel at the bar, his arm around a brunette who wasn't her. Daniel leaving with the same woman past midnight. I didn't need to fabricate anything, reality was damning enough. One rainy Thursday, I slipped the envelope into her mailbox. No note, no explanation. Just evidence. That night, I imagined her face as she opened it. I imagined the crack in her voice when she confronted him. And for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The aftershock. Emily called me 2 days later. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. "Did you know?" she asked. I played dumb. "Know what?" "About Daniel. About the others." I let a pause hang heavy in the air before answering softly, "I'm sorry, Emily." She broke then, sobbing into the phone. I listened in silence, my jaw tight, my heart steady. When she finally hung up, I poured myself a drink and looked out at the wet skyline. It had begun. The trap. But exposing Daniel's infidelity wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted them both to fall apart, to feel the ground vanish beneath their feet. I started feeding Daniel's company rumors. Anonymous tips about his misconduct, his late-night meetings, questionable expenses billed to projects. Seattle's corporate world was small, unforgiving. Within weeks, whispers spread. Daniel's name became a liability in meetings. Meanwhile, Emily leaned on me. She texted, she called. At first I ignored her, then I offered short replies, just enough to keep her tethered. She believed I was her anchor again, the one person she could trust. That was the cruelest part of revenge. Becoming exactly what they wanted, only to twist it at the last moment. The confrontation. It came sooner than I thought. Emily showed up at my apartment one evening, drenched in rain, eyes swollen from tears. "I made a mistake," she whispered as I opened the door. I let her in, silent. She walked around the apartment, looking at the bare walls, the half-empty bookshelves. "You don't belong here," she said softly. "You belong with me." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "With you? Or with Daniel?" She flinched. "I left him. After what I found out, after what he did, I couldn't stay." I studied her. She looked small, broken in a way I hadn't seen before. But all I felt was a hollow satisfaction. She was finally crumbling. The final act. Daniel lost his job 3 months later. The anonymous tips, the whispers, the evidence, it all stacked against him. By then, Emily had already left him, her trust shattered. She tried to come back to me. She pleaded, begged, promised she was different now. But each word slid off me like rain off glass. One night, as she sat across from me in a quiet cafe on Pine Street, I leaned in and told her the truth. I knew, Emily. From the start. I knew about Daniel. I knew about the others. And I let it all burn. I wanted you both to feel what I felt. Her face drained of color. Her lips trembled. You did this?" "Yes." My voice was calm, steady. "You destroyed me, so I destroyed you." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity. No remorse. Just the cold, sharp edge of victory. The empty victory. Revenge isn't sweet. That's the lie people tell themselves, the lie I told myself. In truth, it's hollow. I watched Emily break, watched Daniel fall, and still the emptiness inside me remained. Seattle moved on around me, the same drizzle, the same skyline, the same crowds rushing down wet streets. But I was different. Harder. Colder. Sometimes, late at night, I hear her voice in my head, the way she whispered, "I love you," years ago, back when it was real. I wonder if I lost more than she ever did. But then I remind myself, she chose this. And beneath the silent skies of this city, I chose what came after. This wasn't love anymore. It wasn't grief. It was survival. And survival means learning to live in the ruins you've made. Beneath the Silent Skies, Part 3, Ashes in the Rain. Chapter 1, Silence After the Storm. Seattle felt quieter after everything. Not the city itself, the buses still groaned along the slick streets, the rain still tapped steadily against glass, and the murmur of late-night bars still spilled onto sidewalks. No, the noise was still there. But to me, it all felt muted, like someone had wrapped the world in a layer of cotton. My apartment on Capitol Hill was the same mess of boxes and half-assembled furniture it had always been. I'd never bothered to finish unpacking after leaving Emily. Maybe I told myself it was temporary, that I'd return once things settled. But they never did. And now, even with the victory of revenge burning faintly in the back of my mind, the place felt emptier than ever. Revenge had given me power, but it hadn't given me peace. And as the city outside hummed with its endless rhythm, I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. The storm was over, yes. But the ruins it left behind were mine to live in. Chapter 2, Ghosts of the Past. The mind is cruel in its choice of memories. I wanted to forget Emily, the betrayal, the tears, the lies, but instead, I remembered the best of her. The small things. The smell of her hair after rain, the way her fingers traced idle patterns on my arm when we watched TV. Some nights, I'd wake to the sound of her laughter in my dreams. It wasn't real, of course. The apartment was silent, the bed cold. But in those few seconds between dream and waking, I almost believed she was still there. And when reality crashed back, it was like losing her all over again. Chapter 3, Whispers of Guilt. I told myself she deserved it. That Daniel deserved worse. But late at night, when whiskey dulled the edges of my thoughts, guilt crept in. What if I had gone too far? Destroying a man's career, shattering a woman's heart, was it justice, or was it cruelty? Sometimes I'd imagine Emily finding out everything, not just Daniel's betrayal but my hand behind it all. I'd see her face in my mind, drained of color, lips trembling as she whispered my name like a curse. And for the first time since the storm, I wondered if revenge had made me into something worse than the man who betrayed me. Chapter 4, The Unexpected Letter. The letter came on a gray morning, tucked under my apartment door. No envelope, just a folded sheet of paper. I know what you did. Meet me, or everyone else will too. There was no signature. No explanation. Just a time and place scribbled in hurried handwriting, Friday, 9 p.m., Volunteer Park. My heart pounded as I read it again and again. Someone knew. Someone had seen through the careful layers of my revenge. The whisper of guilt turned into a roar of panic. Chapter 5, The Encounter. Volunteer Park was nearly empty that night, the drizzle turning paths slick with fallen leaves. The city lights glowed faintly in the distance, muted by mist. I waited, my hands in my coat pockets, eyes scanning every shadow. And then he appeared. Daniel. He looked worse than I remembered, disheveled, hollow-eyed, bitterness etched deep into his face. You thought you were clever, he said, his voice hoarse. But I know it was you. The leaks, the rumors, the photos. All of it. I didn't answer. The silence between us was louder than words. You ruined me, he hissed. So now I'll ruin you. Chapter 6, Fractures. After that night, paranoia became my shadow. Was he bluffing, or did he really have proof? Would he go to my boss, to the police, to Emily? I checked over my shoulder on commutes. I jumped at knocks on the door. Even the sound of my phone buzzing set my teeth on edge. The city hadn't changed, but I had. Seattle streets I once knew by heart now felt hostile, each corner a place Daniel might appear. The hunter had become the hunted. Chapter 7, A Visit from Emily. When Emily showed up, I almost didn't open the door. She stood there in the rain, her hair damp, her eyes searching mine. Can we talk? She asked softly. Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat at the table, the silence heavy. Finally, she said, I don't hate you. I hate what happened. But I don't hate you. The words cut deeper than I expected. Because beneath everything, a part of me still wanted her forgiveness. A part of me still wanted her. But I knew I didn't deserve it. Not anymore. Chapter 8, Collision. Daniel didn't wait long. Within weeks, rumors about me began spreading at work. Anonymous emails to HR about unethical behavior. Hints that I'd been involved in corporate sabotage. Nothing concrete, but enough to plant suspicion. And Emily called me one night, her voice trembling. "Daniel told me everything," she said. "About what you did. Is it true?" The silence on the line was unbearable. I wanted to deny it, but the words stuck. "Yes," I whispered. The line went dead. Chapter 9, Collapse. My world narrowed after that. Work turned cold, colleagues distant, meetings tense. Emily stopped calling. And Daniel, even in his ruined state, had managed to strike back, leaving me isolated in the very silence I had crafted for them. Night stretched endlessly, the city lights blurring through my whiskey glass. I had destroyed them, yes. But in the process, I had destroyed myself. Chapter 10, Ashes in the Rain. It rained harder than ever that night. I walked through the empty streets of Capitol Hill, the water soaking through my coat, running down my face like tears I refused to shed. Everything was gone, my marriage, my peace, even the satisfaction of revenge. All that remained were ashes, scattered in the endless rain. Seattle's skyline rose ahead, beautiful and indifferent, lights flickering like stars swallowed by clouds. I whispered to no one. "This isn't the end." Because even in ruins, some part of me still clung to survival. And survival meant finding something beyond the ashes, if anything still existed at all.